August, I joined the competition, and we made a team and wrote a digital assistant for new students, basically telling them where in which building is going to be your lecture, how do you get there, by bike, by bus, automatically scheduling when to take it, how to be there, so making the life of a student easier. And yeah, we did make second place at that competition. And the first place was actually a small idea called Sona. But I was approached all the time by the founders of Sona to join their team. And after my company failed, I switched basically to Sona. Also took some of my teammates with me. And yeah, since then I've been like the first still remaining employee at Sona. So if it's a parking lot, it's installed at the parking lot on top of a street lamp. If it's in a parking housing, it's installed on the inside roofs of each level of that parking house. And then the vision data is taken and evaluated on that computer directly with a neural network, and of course also multiple neural networks and algorithms with pre and post processing. My career started in school when I was kind of a problem student, and my parents decided to initiate a robotics club at my school, so to give me something to do and not to annoy the teachers.
So without any further ado, let's welcome Jonas Zagatta. So also, since Sona is a startup with 12 employees, how is the fundamental operation of it? How would you describe it?
It's a little bit like a sandwich in the end, because there on top there are the executives, so the three founders and me, but we're also again on the very bottom of everything. So we of course design the way we work, we make the strategy where the company is going, we tell the different departments what to work on. But then again, if those people can't finish their jobs, because 70% of it is very dull work and 30% of it is really topic specific and we need their creativity, then guess what? We have to do the 70% dull work again. So we're basically sandwiching all the other people in the company with our work efforts. And if they don't have enough time, we have to make up for it. Although our employees work very hard and very long, but as very lucky for us, they do it by choice. And then we have three departments, basically. One is sales, one is software, and one is hardware. And I'm also the leader of the hardware department, which has two employees, one project and hardware and production manager, and one Hiwi, who basically does most of the production with help from us founders and me as an executive. And yeah, then we have the IT team, biggest team in our company, 4 developers, very creative people, and 2 people in the sales team. And they have, yeah, their own meeting structure, basically their own little world, but we try to connect them as much as possible. And then if we have a project, we always try to take like 3 people out of those teams and they make the project team for one project. So you have 1 IT person, 1 hardware person, 1 salesperson.
Okay, so there's more or less a structure involved there. Right?
Yes.
And yeah, talking about what Sona does, basically, what are your competitor companies? What are the other companies who are solving similar problems, maybe in the parking space or using the technology that you have, something similar, and applying it to other applications? Do you know of some competitors?
Yeah, actually, there were already a lot of competitors that have left the market already. So, for example, all the big German infrastructure creators, technology companies, Telecom, Bosch, Siemens, they
Okay.
all tried their version of solving parking and traffic problems. And from the specific parking market, especially the computer vision market, they're no longer active. They had some tries also with ground sensors in major cities in Germany, and then decided not to pursue that problem themselves. And then there are, of course, other companies making a little bit different solution like ground sensors. It's a little bit more established companies, companies that come from normal traffic management systems and have evolved also to create newer solutions, but mostly ground sensors. And yeah, we are working together as partners with the biggest street infrastructure providers in Germany. There are a couple of companies that are our partners and are actively selling our products, which is really good. So the market recognizes who we are and what service we provide. And we are now getting finally resold by the big players on the market. Let's see, this is one part of the infrastructure ecosystem, and Sona with its partners or as a partner provides a really valuable service in this whole streets and traffic infrastructure, because that's really a huge thing. You cannot just sell anyone one parking sensor. What is somebody going to do with it? Where's the data going to go? Does he have the right to hang it up there? Is it okay to put this sensor pointing at a public space? Who's the data privacy responsible person of the government in that situation? So it's basically not a product you can sell to people, but it's a whole ecosystem you bring somewhere, either to private companies and their parking lots, or preferably for us to cities and public spaces.
Okay. And you mentioned that the bigger companies like Bosch and others attempted to solve this problem, but they couldn't. What was the reason for it? Uh, why was it not solvable? And what actually motivates Sona to actually approach a problem that wasn't that was essentially rejected by bigger companies?
I think a lot of it is the business side also, because big companies have to deliver earnings all the time. They have very high cost because they have also very high salaries to their very skilled employees, which is
Yes.
something that has to, which makes a project having to mature much faster. So they tried it, they saw this is not their market, and they have a multitude of markets open. So possibly other markets were more interesting. I wouldn't say they would never be able to do it, but they weren't able to do it on their terms. So we,
Okay.
as a very focused small company, of course, have not the chance just to branch out somewhere else very
Yeah.
quickly. And with our small team, we have the possibility to innovate and to redefine what we sell, who we sell it to, and what's the focus of the product. So if we see we provide the service of parking and traffic detection with live data, and somebody needs analytics behind that, we can just create an analytics platform for that data in a couple of weeks, couple of months, build a prototype. That is something I think bigger companies cannot necessarily do because of their structure, their focus, and also their cost and return planning. So this is something that has enabled us to work still in this market.
Yeah, probably for the bigger companies yeah, of course, a lot of different other projects are going on, and they have to focus their direction basically, whether this area that they are trying to delve into, whether this will give proper return on investments or not, or is it really worth their time? And for you as a small startup, this is your entire focus, right? You cannot diverge for it. So that also means that you have to make it work, right?
Yes.
There's no other option. And let's talk about the solutions that Sona offers. So essentially, you embed computer vision and AI algorithms for detection of parking lot, and you have those sensors applied on street lamps and other places. Can you talk about what kind of solution you're providing? You also mentioned that you offer the whole ecosystem and not just hardware or software.
Yeah, so what we as a company produce is definitely the core of it is our sensor, which is basically a vision system connected to a computer. And that computer is installed at the place where the thing we're analyzing is happening. So if it's a parking lot, it's installed at the parking lot on top of a street lamp. If it's in a parking housing, it's installed on the inside roofs of each level of that parking house. And then the vision data is taken and evaluated on that computer directly with a neural network, and of course also multiple neural networks and algorithms with pre and post processing. And then in our device, it's sent to a software from software way separated space, which has connection to the internet, and then send out to our server infrastructure, where then the data is accessible. So what we sell is basically this sensor, which can detect parking spots, free and empty, on specified spots. And we have a product for free on-street parking, so where you don't necessarily know where somebody's going to park, but you have to measure how much distance is in between cars.
Yeah.
And then the third product there is the car counting, where we count the cars driving through. And this is then added to our personal Sonar ecosystem, where the data goes onto a server, which has a front end where you can see that data on a map. It also provides an API, because we hope in the future most of our customers will use the API and integrate that data into their platforms, because we don't want to be a single parking data platform that is data. And since we also generate other data, it has to go in some larger context. And yeah, in addition to that detection of traffic conditions, we have recently added some sensors to our portfolio. So for example, we have now weather sensors and also NOx and different particle sensors that we can connect to the same device, that are then available for requests on the same server. And also we have added on the server level analytics. So for example, here in Aachen, we have one whole street set up with our sensors with unmarked on-street parking. And for the people here, you can actually take a look at it and see where is there a free parking spot, how can I get there? And for the city, they can know, okay, where are people parking the most? How long do they park there specifically? Is there an entrance that is currently blocked, and then maybe have to see that it gets freed up again, and stuff like that. And on top of that, for all our products, privacy is the major focus, which is actually a service we provide. So we have very efficient documentation for city officials, for residents that are somehow impacted by the solution. And this is also an integral part of our service, making this privacy sensitive, but also explaining and emphasizing privacy in this scenario to everybody involved.
Okay, interesting. So, and who are the customers that you have? If you can share that thing.
No, I can share that. There is, for example, the city of Aachen. There
Yeah.
has been the city of Heinsberg, which is also in the vicinity here. City of Munich. So these are some of the city clients. Then, of course, multiple big automobile companies in Germany. Then they have people who provide services for them, smaller companies that do development, also some of them. And then a lot of utilities throughout Germany have started pilots with us, where they test our technology on their soil, their company building, their company parking lot, to evaluate how the utility company for that city can push that system into the whole city then.
Okay. And you also have major automobile companies as your customers there. So what does Sona also aim to go, since you are you already have the technology of, detecting the parking lots, and you use computer vision tremendously, I assume. And do you also plan to, get into the autonomous driving sector, maybe work with the customers that you have and, go in a different direction if that's one of the things that you are considering?
So, to be honest, we definitely have nothing whatsoever in that sector as of now.
Yeah,
But it has been a long time in planning or part of our vision to provide this digital copy of the city or of the public places in the city. And that is then again, of course, something that is very interesting to autonomous driving cars. So even with the best sensors, you can't look around the corner. But with local networking, where we don't necessarily send everything through the internet, but distribute data locally as some kind of broadcast, we could, for example, around the corner and everywhere in the vicinity, broadcast if people are on the street. And an autonomous car could receive that broadcast and
yeah,
then react to it. So that is one of the vision we have for the city of the future. But that is a market that is still evolving and sometimes a little bit slower than we expect. So parking is definitely something everybody in every city can deal with. Autonomous cars is not a project they're actively focusing right now on. So
yeah.
we don't as well because yeah, we also have to sell and pay our employees.
Exactly. So, do you also consider other possibilities for Sona every time now and then? Do you experiment with uh, new directions that you can go, or you try to focus the majority of your time, bettering your product and making it accessible and available to the customers? How
So
much of the time is actually went, going in one direction, and the other, how much of the time is gone in exploration?
So I would say we have this vision which hasn't changed much for the last few years. And then we make sure that any product we sell or any new idea we explore is to a large extent based on what we have, because we can't just reinvent the wheel so quickly,
Yeah,
especially if you also have to deliver the accountability and durability of the product. So if we would make some new product, we have to be as professional as a super large company and just guarantee that it works, which is why we can always just change small parts of the actual product. But then again, we try to extend our system with every customer. So for example, recently we have had a contract with the recycling plant in Duisburg, a German city, and they have set up our sensors at their recycling plant where people come, for example, with their trash from making their gardens or bringing old furniture. And we have digitized with our sensor infrastructure the waiting line so that the customers can now see online how long they would have to wait if they come now. And then they can also see historical occupation and so-called popular times. So maybe I wait till tomorrow, or maybe I wait till 6 p.m. to go there. And yeah, that is something we can do with the same technology we have developed with a little bit changes. And we try to explore those markets all the time. They're actually, from a technical standpoint, very close to what we make, but they may seem from the outside like a new market. But in the end,
yeah.
it's technically very close to what we do all the time.
Okay. Can you also elaborate a bit about the technology involved? Basically, you'd be using neural networks to detect objects. I'd let you explain what are the things that you're doing.
Yeah, so from the detection side, very integral is, of course, TensorFlow and OpenCV and Python,
Yeah.
which do most of the neural network work. But then again, from a product perspective, also very important is Docker, which we use to compartmentalize our system. So if we add new sensors to the portfolio, as the weather sensor I just mentioned, this is basically just added as a Docker container to our infrastructure, which has some components which actually have network access and can send data out, kind of like getting all the data and then putting it somewhere where it can be used. And then we have components which just do very specific evaluations based on simple configurations, which have nothing to do with what they represent in the real world, which is basically just like, okay, you analyze this and you don't care in this part of the software what you do. So this compartmentalization and Dockerization plays a huge role. So we use Docker very extensively. And apart from that, some databases, we use onboard some Redis database to manage this distribution between the different services. And of course, then big databases on our servers and back and front end. But I must confess, I do not know which back and front end technology we are actually using.
Okay. Let's talk about project management, because in a startup, managing software and also other work-related managerial things, managing everything can be really complicated, especially because you have to do everything on your own. You have to figure stuff out. So how do you go about uh, project management?
So I have one rule that defines project management for me, and that is the dumbest person in the room, which is mostly me as the project manager, has to be confident that the plan works out. So that's the core rule. And
Okay.
following up on that is that me as the dumbest person in the room, the project manager, I have to be listening what the people tell me. I have to ask the right questions and I have to incorporate that information into a plan. And that plan I then can again discuss with the people actually doing the work. And then I have to distribute the work, but not split something up that shouldn't be split up. Then I have to make meetings where different parts of projects that have been separate before are talking to each other, making sure there's the right definition of interaction between both parts, for example. And that's basically my task, to be very general, have a very general view on the project and asking as many questions as I can, so that I, as a person who cannot actually do the work that is be done, is still confident that it will finish on time. And that knowledge I have to incorporate in some kind of plan, which I then keep up to date and make sure people follow. And then, of course, I have to listen when people do something or tell me this is not going to work because of this. And yeah, it's basically for me that easy. Apart from one other thing, but that came also very natural to me, which is time planning. I think other people generally should plan 2 times or 4 times the time they think in their head, even if they put all the extra time on top of it, still double or quadruple it. But to me, actually, my gut estimate seems to be very accurate on time planning.
Okay, so a part of it also comes from having involved in a lot of team projects before. And a major challenge with the project management could be, okay, one thing is that you set the deadlines and you make sure everyone knows exactly what they are supposed to do, but then getting people to do it. Of course, you'd hire the people who are motivated enough to do it, but sometimes maybe one of the employees is stuck in a problem and it's taking longer than necessary. So and the deadline probably cannot be met because maybe it was estimated wrong in the first place, or any other reason, or anything came up in between. So how do you manage people side of project management?
So very important is for me in every regard to lead by example. So if I want a person who is basically managing my developers to manage them well, I have to manage him well. So we have one head of our software department, which is mostly who I have to talk to if I plan a project and have to discuss the software. And I have to make sure that I listen to his criticism, to his evaluation of my plans and what he's saying. And I make sure and tell him explicitly that that is how I work, so he can take that and use the same way to approach the same thing with his developers. So I try to have a lot of feedback loops, make the people feel that they are involved, that they're actually having an impact on my decision, and I'm just placing them on top of them. Also, sometimes just placing stuff, because with experience, you sometimes, in some cases, know better, but that's not the regular
Yeah.
case. That's not mostly the case, just sometimes. And I think if you really do a good way in managing people, they feel that, they don't feel constrained, they feel empowered because it takes something of a mental effort away from them so they can concentrate on what they do best. And if that's the example you're setting, if somebody else has to manage more developers, he sees, well,
Yeah.
how is it done? I have not done it before. What is my example to follow? If it's me and I'm doing a good job, then it will hopefully be the same. And I would never expect anybody to follow any rule I'm not myself following. So if I have high standards, I expect people to follow the same standards. But the
Yeah.
more I am a positive example for that, the more I can expect them to do that. And the less it feels like a hypocrisy if I expect a lot
Yeah.
of people.
So essentially, doing the things that you expect from others, leading by example. That's
Yes.
interesting. And also, you make sure that everyone you work with knows clearly what is expected of them and how to work. So communication would also play a major role. Let's talk about ensuring the maintenance of a company culture. It can be most of the people that I've talked to who are into startups, who are working in small startups, say that it's the hardest part, right? Maintaining the company culture, ensuring that everyone has the same set of values is the hardest part. So how do you ensure that thing?
Yeah, basically, to me, that is the most fun part of my job. It's me who is responsible to ensure that with our employees. And what I found very relevant is to have certain principles, interactions, meetings, teams, and fun parts. And then it's really important to stick to it. So I have been through multiple iterations of project management styles, documenting styles, team event styles, communication styles. And the thing on a meta level I found to be most important is find something that is more a guideline than a rule. And then, of course, lead by example, but also stick to it. Don't bail on it if it gets like uninteresting to you. You have a little bit of financial trouble or time trouble. No, this is something you have promised to your employees, which is also a fun thing in a lot of times. Then just stick to it. We have one very interesting example, which I consider one of my prime ideas. It's called the brunch. So every 2 months, we take half the Monday off and meet in a conference room. Everybody brings some food, and then everybody has 5 to 15 minutes to present what has done in the last 2 months and show to every other employee his contributions, and there can be some discussions. And this is something where I personally just have to be the asshole because everybody gets a set of questions from me and they're like,
Yeah.
no, I have to work. I don't want to do that. This is taking my time. And then I have to be very strong and say, no, I really need you to do this. And then the other executives say, boy, come on, this is like 5 hours of 12 people. You know how much this costs? I have to say, no, I really want to do this. And then I have to explain, and then I have to be very hard to make that happen. And everybody's complaining from day to night to me about this from both sides. And afterwards, everybody's happy. Everybody's like, boy, this was so interesting. I learned so much. Finally, I could feel the reward for my work because people saw what I did and showed real appreciation. And we had a fun time together. And yeah, in the end, we even do like a pain point workshop, which I developed, where we highlight social or organizational pain points with the company, which is also a thing you should not skip, and also always refer to the problems of last time. So how have we as a company improved them? And basically my cycle with this is that I just have to be sure myself that it's the right way to approach, because apart from that, I get before only criticism from almost everybody, because nobody
Yeah.
wants to quit his work, nobody wants to put money in it, but afterwards people are happy about it. So that's kind of the tough part of maintaining team culture using this example. nobody really wants to do it and put effort in, but somebody just has to be the asshole forcing everybody to do it. And from my point of view, it's really working out great. We have a really great culture where exceptional people work for us that could be doing things that earn them a lot more money, but they feel they are in the right place. They're learning, they're contributing, they're
Yeah.
being valued, they have nice people to work with, like an environment which makes them thrive. And yeah, basically to sum this up, there has to be one person looking out for company culture and
Yeah.
defining that. Of course, in discussion with everybody, it doesn't have to be my idea of culture, but one person has to be really behind that and making that happen, because it's never going to happen by itself.
So you take the responsibility of, building the whole culture, and you make sure that everyone has the same set of values. Like, for example, you say that if a person promises to deliver, then he has to be like being a man of his words. So this is also like a very when we talk about building company culture, what comes to mind normally is organizing parties and fun events so that people can connect with each other better, which is also important. But what you talk about is more on a ground level, on a root level, inculcating these values and knowing what to expect, and also helping each other grow, and not just connect, helping each other grow, which is probably also one of the main things, right, that you expect of the employees.
Yeah, actually, growth is another one of my favorite topics. We just had a reframing of our reoccurring HR meeting. So it was called HR meeting. And new people were always super afraid when it came up. They were like, oh, I'm going to be fired or something. But actually, for us, and specifically for me, it was always about something else. So now we call it DOPE, discussion of professional experience.
Dope
And
discussion.
yeah, DOPE. And what it is also a concept I put together, of course, from different other smart people. I didn't come up with all of it by myself, but it is a process where we answer some questionnaires in a digital tool that we built. The executive and the stakeholders that are working with one employee fill it out, and the employee fills it out. And basically, there are all questions answered that would normally be discussed in the meeting. So what happens then is that we have all this information written down. If the employee has problems or something, he can really take the time to think about it, write them down. And also everybody else in the company who has some stake, I say, in this employee can fill out the form. And then the specific HR manager for this person, his boss, so to say, has to organize that there is a preliminary meeting where we all get together and discuss this. So basically, there is an employee and he says, no, I want to work with another programming language because I was, for example, promised so when I started. Now I'm
Yeah.
only working with JavaScript, but I want to work with Kotlin. And if you just hear that in an HR meeting, you can't really do something about it. You have to have a second meeting in between, discuss. So we collect all that info also about performance before, then we discuss it and make a presentation which answers all the employees' questions, maybe also demands that we have as a company. But all that is already done before the actual HR, or as it now called, DOPE meeting. And then we sit together. We can quickly go through the facts because everybody has said what he wants to say. Everybody has seen that. And we use most of the time for actual discussions. So we leave discussion points open and then come prepared, for example, to have a discussion like, how can we make time that you can work with Kotlin, for example? And this is something that really is, I think, valuable to us as a company, but especially to the employees, because it is something that helps their growth. Their response to how do I work, what do I work with is really heard because we have to take the time to evaluate all their responses and wishes. And of course, it's also designed to get that out of them. And then we can actually have the discussion we're supposed to have to decide or to foster the employees, but also the company's growth. And that has been very instrumental. And my goal was to make this a meeting employees look forward to. And I'm on a good road there.
Okay, so what I find it really interesting is that you care so much about individual employees growing and not just company growing as a whole, because the company growing as a whole might mean that sometimes the employees have to do work that they do not really want to, but is essential. But at the same time, like you mentioned, one of the employees wants to learn a different programming language, and then you're like, okay, we'll make out time for that, and then you have proper communication and discussions regarding that. So
We can't just take time out of our schedule or disappoint our customers to do it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
to be honest, we expect a lot of uninteresting work from our employees. So it's
yes,
basically our duty to pay them back. I don't want to have
yeah,
any discussion with an employee if I say, no, you have to do this labeling of data, for example, for a couple of
yeah,
weeks.
yeah,
Then I don't want to be discussing with the employee, do we have to do this? And then I can do two things. I can play my I'm the boss card, but that's really a difficult thing, which I would not recommend to do. It's better if the employee says, yeah, I mean, this person is looking out for me, I'm looking out for him. And if I say, or if he says we need 3 weeks of labeling data, I'm going to do 3 weeks of labeling data, which then in turn makes us as a company so much more powerful. Because if we need to do something, we can do it as a team. We can do it with 12 people. We don't have to put one person in the corner doing it or something, and everybody helps out. And that's what
yeah,
gives us strength and agility.
yeah, interesting. So you have to do the stuff that is important but may not be interesting. So labeling data, nobody wants to do that.
But
But
everybody
you
has
have to,
to.
everybody has to, and you
Actually,
divide it,
everybody has to.
everybody, you divide it with everybody in the company. So
Yes.
yeah, that's more productive anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, this is like one of the really interesting things about the culture, focusing about growth. So you talk about the 5 hour event that you have that people complain about, but at the end they come out satisfied. Can you dig a bit deeper into what are the things that you do? Do you give them questionnaires? What are the things that you do in the?
So I've made a questionnaire for one for the, so to say, company. So it's for any stakeholder in the company, and one a little bit different one for the employee. And those have been refined over the years. So if I do any project, my first goal is to get it done, to get real world data back. So we just build a questionnaire, and if you would see the first one, it's really horrible. But we took the learnings and also the response from the employees. And one important thing is also we made them fill it out in the first time. So the first really bad questionnaire, everybody said, no, it's too much, I don't want to do it. And you just have to say, no, you do it. I take your feedback, I will incorporate it, but we don't discuss before you've done it. After you've done it, yes. Before, no. And then you have to be really honest, take that feedback, incorporate it. Also for me, listen to podcasts when we go to a conference, listen to the talks. For example, there
Yeah,
was one conference in Berlin where I learned a lot about what questions to ask to get also personal and upcoming changes and interests out of an employee, which is quite valuable. Questions like, how do you like to receive feedback? When do you feel valued? That is something that is in our employee questionnaire that I didn't think of before. There was like, I heard this in a talk and I was like, yeah, I really need that in my questionnaire.
yeah,
And yeah, then you have to look at all these answers. We evaluate, for example, which projects did the employee work on, and the employee evaluates how much time did I commit to that, and the stakeholders evaluate how much did we get out of that. How did you evaluate the effort and result the person made? And we have questions like, what do you want to do more? What do you want to do less? And two very important parts of this questionnaire are not performance based, but we call them ethics. We have work ethics and team ethics, which means, is the person providing accurate descriptions of what he or she needs. Because if you have an employee and he's smart, but he can never tell you what he needs to work, and then he waits a week and said, I didn't get that, then it doesn't work for us. So if you need something as an employee, you just have to say it, and it's my responsibility to get it to you. But you have to know what it is, and you have to tell me. And then we have questions like rating the respect somebody has for the other team members and the other team members' contributions, his approach to working times. We have to make sure that it's not too much and not too little. We have to make sure that the work topics people choose are appropriate to their personal needs and the company needs. So not only do what we want you to do, but maybe you are only doing what we want you to do, but we also need you to develop. None of us can stay where he is. Everybody of us has to grow, because that's the most benefit for us with the least invest. So finding a new person that can do that is much more expensive than making you learn it. And so you develop, you grow, you become a bigger asset for us. So really have to focus on that. And one also really important thing is that the employee evaluates his superior. So basically the same thing the company does about the person, the employee does about his direct boss. And I think that's also really valuable, because it gives you the chance to write down what you really think. And of course, it would be a little bit different if only the boss would read it. But I make sure to read everything of this and be present in every HR meeting, or at least in the pre-discussion. And everybody knows me in the company, since I also do all the hiring. So everybody knows what I stand for and what my values are. So I really hope everybody feels comfortable writing down his real point of view there, because even if his boss would be like, I don't see it that way, he can be sure that I read it as well, and I will be putting my weight in there.
Yeah, so giving people voice so that they can essentially be expressing their true selves, because many times it can be that the employees have needs, but they wouldn't prioritize it because of their, the immediate boss might not be acknowledging of that. So that's really really important part of it. And let's talk about hiring employees. Do you also have like questionnaires or tests of some sort for hiring employees? What are your criteria for this?
So the main thing of our hiring process is that I talk to everybody who applies. So that's one of my core principles. If somebody applies, even if I know I won't hire him, I text him immediately, sorry, that position is no longer open, but I will still schedule a talk with you for 1 hour where we can get to know each other. Okay. And then I start with this talk always with presenting the company and who we are, because this is the image we deliver as a company if we hire somebody or not, which in the end determines how we are seen by people applying in the future, because people talk about this stuff. And so it's really starting with me giving the people something, and as well as in the process with employees that are already in our company, I give them something and then I expect something. So I then in the talk expect to see if a person responds to my questions very specifically. So if I ask a question, I expect the person to understand where I'm going and answer in a fruitful way. So it's not really about specific experiences or credentials, but about communication and working together. And that's basically the spirit of all of our HR efforts. So I think I've never once looked at the grades of somebody. So of course they send them to me and I scroll through it, but I personally simply don't care, because I will find out if you're good. And if you're good, then I will probably hire you. If you're not, I won't.
How do you find out if he or she is good?
The most important thing is communication and willingness to learn. And I think about communication, you can learn a lot even in the first talk, because you're just discussing. I showed the company, the person told me who he is, what he has done, we discuss a little, what could you do in our context? What would you
Yeah.
provide to my project? And that's the first key question, because I can see, does this person understand what we're doing, how we're working?
Yeah.
What is he or she willing to contribute? So this is the first step, just this discussion. And I place a lot of emphasis on my gut feeling. There's no testing involved. When we say, yeah, we want to proceed here, then we mostly do a paid testing project. And the project also has a specific structure. It is maximum 4 weeks, but the time committed per week is depending on how much the person has time to spare. So if you're a full-time
Okay.
worker, you probably just have 1 day on the weekend. So
Yeah.
the whole testing project will be 4 days. If you're a student and you have free time, then of course, if you want to, you can do 4 weeks full-time. Makes you able to show more. And the project then is basically posed by us. Sometimes we have 2 different ones. And the key there is that you have to deliver the result in the end. Otherwise, you won't get the job. There's no way if you don't deliver to get the job. But here comes the funny thing. In the middle of those 4 weeks, we're discussing how far you've come and how we have to reevaluate the goal of the project. So you can say, I was much too big. I cannot get all of this done,
Yeah.
but I could get this specifically valuable part done. So you're involved on deciding the goal of this project in the middle of the project. And this goal we decide in the middle of the project that you have to meet, because you did contribute to deciding what is possible. You had
Yeah.
2 weeks to explore the subject, and that's basically where we draw the line. You have to get that, then you get the job. If you don't, you don't.
That's a really unconventional way of hiring. I haven't heard about this before any time. So you actually give them actual work and see how they are performing rather than evaluating based on their resume, on what they have done already, and their grades. You actually give them work to see if they actually deliver or not, and that directly translates to work. And apart from in contrary to the other way of hiring where you assume that he would be working, you make sure that you hire someone who is working, which is a very different way, I would say. And
It has worked out really well for us, I would say. But of
yeah.
course, I understand this is not a way you can just give to. Imagine Siemens would do this. How many employees they would have to listen to if they have,
Yeah. Yeah.
people applying, and how many test projects would they have to make? It's not something everybody can do, but
Yeah,
we're in
that's
the
true.
very fortunate position that we can do it. So I think we also have an obligation to do it so well as I think we do.
Yeah, since you can manage and pull this thing off, it's a way more efficient way of hiring. Yeah. Now let's talk about uh, data protection and privacy that you would have to take care of in working at a startup, and even for the solution that you are offering. Data protection plays a role there.
Yeah, so the beginning of this data privacy focus was actually one sentence that our CEO and co-founder Victor coined once. We were in an accelerator somewhere, living in a hotel for 3 months, working all day, and we tried to sketch out our vision, which has since then practically, in very practical aspects, changed, but not in terms of the mission. One sentence he coined there was, I want to have the right to be everywhere with my product. So maybe a little bit in regards to what Facebook does or what other social media platforms do with, they are being used for misinformation, control of people. I mean, not like that's the whole purpose, but they're also used for that. And I think that's an undeniable fact.
Yeah.
And we want the moral, ethical right for our product to be everywhere. That was kind of the starting point for all this privacy and data protection
To be
focus.
everywhere in what terms? Uh,
Like having our sensors all over the world in every city, even expanding maybe to other kinds of topics, environments. And if you have like a surveillance platform, I don't think you are allowed to be everywhere. You may be allowed to be in a prison or in a public building where there could be a lot of turmoil or something. There,
yeah,
surveillance might be warranted. Or
yeah.
if you are in a secret facility, but those products are not welcome everywhere, and they shouldn't be. And I want our products to be able to be everywhere. And that is kind of the thinking behind our privacy. It's not the for most people in the company, it's not the privacy itself, but it's the justification for the product and the interference with people. And then again, for me, I'm a very thorough data privacy advocate, I would say. It plays a personal role, and I'm very comfortable with being a pain in the ass of other people. So, as I already mentioned with the HR program and the brunch, this is also something where I always, are uncomfortable to other people. If I think we are doing something that we are not shouldn't do, then I speak up and I say, no, I don't like this. I will not support this. And that is something that is not regular in every company. But
Yeah.
since I do it, almost everybody does it. And it's not like a childish way of refusing to work. It's just, I call this having advocacy. So being adversaries, but not enemies. So if you have an opinion, you can be an adversary to somebody else who has a different opinion, and you present it, and you will possibly come out better for both sides in the end. So it's really encouraging everybody in the company to think about, what do you stand for? What do we do here? And contribute to that. So that is kind of the foundation of this data privacy. And then again, that translates to code. If we plan a project, there is of course the IT guys and maybe the sales guys, but also, for example, me. And if we design a system, one person, might be me, might be also somebody else, says, no, I don't think that's good. That could be a risk in the future. That is not true to our values, for example. And on top of that, of course, comes then the real incorporation, which is in terms of how we design our infrastructure, separating parts of systems from each other, and also a lot of documentation and public communication. So we have to tell people, for example, cities, that this is something valuable to their people, not just putting CCTV cameras everywhere, sending the data to a server, and then running machine learning algorithms there, because then what else could you do? So having the professionality, then not only the moral standard, because moral standards are basically easy, you just have to decide to have them. What comes then is the professionality to really incorporate it
Yeah.
and make it accessible. So we have to have document explaining, what do we actually do with the data we gather? How does our training work? How does our process of improving the system work? And how is the whole data flow? And we have to take the effort to document that and then publicize that to our customers. And then if we set up in public spaces, take the effort to make a flyer with all the relevant information and give it to the residents there. And also be there to talk to them, not just that. No, I'm not talking to you. The city told me to do this, and I'm just going to do it. This is not the way we can approach things. So it's really living this concept as a company, also as a person, everybody in the team.
Okay, interesting. And you mentioned that data protection and privacy is also personal to you, and you don't use WhatsApp, Facebook, and other apps. Can you also talk about that?
Yeah,
What
so
is your reason?
from my personal point of view, there are two parts to it. One is that I think the technological level we have in society does not represent the society that we are. Technology is a lot of times misused. And I will not say I have any proof of that, but to me it is evident that people are being manipulated May it be now with COVID-19, was it before with Black Lives Matter, immigrants, no immigrants, whatever. People are trying to use technology to manipulate. I think you've seen
I
that in the
mean, then
Brexit campaign, for
then you
example.
then you'd probably have, yeah, that's true, but then you'd probably have to quit the internet altogether, right? I mean, whether you use YouTube or any other website, so you are being manipulated.
Yes, of course. One thing is being aware, and then is not contributing. So you cannot escape being manipulated, but you
Yeah,
can, to a certain extent, escape contributing to that data factory. So I'm not, as much as I can not, I don't share with Facebook, WhatsApp, uh, Microsoft, for example. I don't use Windows, I use Linux. And I have my Android phone is flashed with Lineage OS, which is an open source service. And all the Google services are replaced with other stuff. And I personally don't expect everybody else to do the same thing because they might not have the knowledge. But here comes the second part of this, my personal theory to this, which is kind of the tools mindset. A lot of people in my generation, us younger people, have these tool worship. Oh, my Excel can do what your Google Sheets can't do, or your LibreOffice can't do, or this can't do that. My Mac can do this. Or with Linux, I have to set things up. So for me, I more see it like a blacksmith. I don't expect to do my hammer anything else than being a hammer, and I use the hammer. And that's the same
yeah,
approach to all my tools. I want to be in control of my tools. One part of that enables me to choose data privacy. The other part of that enables me to modify my tools, be more creative, be a better worker, so to say. And to me personally, that amounts to me putting all the effort in, testing solutions, trying it out, maybe living the little bit harder life without Facebook, without Google Maps, using different solutions, getting stuck somewhere if my Navi is not as good as somebody else's. But in the end, I have real world experience for a couple of years now with those systems, and I can recommend to people what is easy to use. So, for example, my whole friendship circle is using Signal, the messenger I also
yeah.
told you is the only one I have. So, all of them are communicating with each other via Signal mostly by this point. And it started with me being the pain in the ass and saying, no, I don't have WhatsApp. And everybody was like, oh no, Jones, come on. Why again? Why are you doing this to us? And now everybody's using Signal and nobody's complaining anymore. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's I don't want to make anybody do it, but I can decide for myself how I do things.
Yeah.
And yeah, if it's a good thing, people will follow on their own. So you have to lead by example, as I've said before.
So there's no privacy issue there with Signal.
I think not. Of course, I'm learning, and systems are changing.
Yeah.
Companies are getting bought by other companies. But from what I know, Signal is yeah, funded by the ex WhatsApp founder, who was an employee of Facebook after he sold WhatsApp, and then he actually gave up, I don't know, 50% of his shares to quit the company earlier than his contract said, and then spend a lot of his money funding this Signal project because he was uncomfortable with what his life's project
Oh.
did. And there's one very influential and informative blog on the internet or information website. It's called privacytools.io. And it basically makes privacy sensible solutions accessible to people. Tells you why you should use this or that. So that's where I started. And then, of course, I read the Signal blog. I read, for example, Hacker News blog, where people refer, is Signal now good or bad? Try to keep up to date. I wouldn't put my hand in the fire saying, no, it's going to be good forever. But as far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, it's the one thing you can trust.
Okay.
And I'm actively paying, actually. So it's free for everybody, but some people are paying, and I'm sponsoring 10 euros per month actually
Oh,
to this project so that other people can have it free. And I try to do that with a lot of the projects that I use so they can be open source and free to everybody else.
that's interesting. So, is it that you're paying it voluntarily, or is there a premium and basic membership or something?
No, it's just voluntarily. So there was a time. So I was Christian when I was young. So when I was an adult, since I don't believe in any religion whatsoever, I quit the church.
Okay.
And where basically my family said, yeah, we understand that, but that money was being used for social causes because in Germany, churches play, I think, in every society, a huge role in social services and also helping society. They might do a lot
Yeah.
of bad, but you cannot say they don't do anything good. So I decided to put that money somewhere else. And as of now, the amount is substantially higher than I contributed to church when you had to, as with taxes, because in Germany you have to pay church taxes. And yeah, that's how it started. I wanted to invest that in the beginning, 35 euros somewhere else. And then I decided to pay where I get value from, which is some podcasts, some applications which I sponsor monthly, some operating systems. And yeah, that's just, I feel good about it. There's no loss to me.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So you quit your religion, but you're still, taking the social element and contributing to in your own way, essentially.
I didn't quit my religion because I was never really religious in that way. But
Hmm.
since it's very normal in a lot of countries around the world to
Yeah.
get one religion from your family, um, yeah. And then when I first got my real job, I had to pay church taxes.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was a good thing to do because at that point I had nothing to do with religion. I
Yeah.
just was technically a member of the church, as almost everybody is in Germany. So I quit and then said, okay, I do something else with the money. So I never really quit religion for software or something that would be far overstated.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And yeah, yeah, interesting that you talk about, the quitting WhatsApp, and then all the other people are suddenly willing to use the app that you have been using. I
Not
actually
suddenly.
forcefully.
Forcefully, yes, that's a better word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually did this 21 day no WhatsApp challenge, but my reason wasn't data privacy or anything. My reason was that it was too distracting for me. So I quit social media for 21 days, and what was surprising for me was that I was using Google Hangouts as a chat, and that's like the shittiest chat platform that you can use. But surprisingly, people are, of course, they're shocked. Why the hell are you not using WhatsApp? That's not normal, right? But at the same time, people are willing to communicate with you, and they'd be either calling you or messaging you on Hangouts if it is important, so you don't really miss out on anything, which is what also the fear would be for people who would quit social media. That's probably one of the main reasons why people don't quit these mainstream platforms, right?
Yeah. So for me, I did some kind of the same experiment. I switched to a feature phone and gave away my smartphone. I quit WhatsApp and Facebook in the beginning to a certain extent, also because of this distraction
Yeah,
theme. And it really, I didn't miss out on anything. I just, people were like, I
exactly.
couldn't reach you on WhatsApp. And I was like, call me. And I started just calling people when I wanted to know something, and just has improved every aspect of my social life then, because I just meet people to talk about it. I don't really
Exactly.
write with anybody. So, of course, on Signal, we have some groups with some memes, but basically, it's when do we meet? That's the main use. And then again, I also have to say on this privacy and social network front, I'm not perfect. So, for example, we use Google Office at work, which is actually my personal decision, but you have to make some trade-offs. So, for example, Google Office G Suite for business is under law obliged not to evaluate all the data they do for private customers. I'm not
Okay.
saying that I believe they actually follow this, but it's a little bit of a step in the right way since we have that law. And it's the best I can do because I wasn't at the time able to convert everybody to open source solutions like LibreOffice and Nextcloud. So this is
Yeah.
something where I have, yeah, sometimes I'm sad about it. On the other hand, it enables us as a company to be so much more effective because G Suite is such an amazing tool. And I just have to hope that the laws in place are actually followed. And another social network I'm using is Reddit, which is also probably just the same as Facebook, but the benefit I get, not the distraction benefit, but the actual question benefit is just so incredibly high that I just think it's worth it. So if I have any question about woodworking, car repair, or just yesterday I had a statistics question and nobody knew the answer, and I'm not very good in statistics. So I just wrote in Reddit channel Ask Statistics, and I got a data science person to answer me my question so thoroughly that I just explored a new world of information in a couple of hours, which I couldn't have any other way. So there's definitely some reasons and some places also in my life where I decide, yeah, it's definitely worth the drawbacks, but it's not worth it for Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp for me.
Yeah, Reddit communities are also more active, right? So you get more responses and you get detailed responses, which is probably what you won't get in other platforms. And another platform you might have heard is Quora, Quara. And this is also like a question and answer platform. So you pose a question and then people who know about that topic, they can answer it in detail. So that's another platform.
Yeah, sometimes I've gotten there by Googling something, but I've never actually used it, like writing or posing a question there.
Yeah, I mean, when you pose a question and then you invite people, I don't know, I haven't used it for a while now, but yeah, you can get really detailed and insightful responses from that as well.
So this is Jonas Zagatta from Sona that you listen to right now. This was part 2.1 of the conversation. This conversation dealt with the professional aspects of his work at Sona, his participation in robotics competitions. See, we'll talk in more depth about his participation in robotics competitions, his views on the education system, and his work as an educator in the field of robotics, along with a lot of interesting ideas and views about life that Jonas possesses. If you enjoy it, please hit the subscribe button and also the notification icon so that you get notified on time whenever the next part is out. This podcast is also available on all major audio platforms, from Spotify to Google Podcasts. So choose your favorite platform and stay tuned.